Hello everyone, we're back in action to begin showcasing The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, the original Nintendo 64 version, because this game has seen a few releases here and there, such as on GameCube. It was released on the collector's disc. I believe I showed that off on my show and tell, as well as there was a dual disc, Ocarina of Time / Master's Quest. I showed that off, I believe, and then also, of course, most notably, this game has been remade on the Nintendo 3DS, which oddly enough seems to be kind of hard to come by, but it is a really great game. First thing that has to be said is that even though by the time this video hits YouTube, it'll be super old news, but how about that Nintendo Direct announcement where the Nintendo Switch Online plus bonus features, you can then play some Sega Genesis games and Nintendo 64 games. That's really awesome, actually. In fact, I mean, like for example, I was blown away by the fact that, Banjo-Kazooie is coming back to a Nintendo platform? I mean, Microsoft has bought over 50% of the shares of Rareware like forever ago, and we have not seen, any original IP sort of game on there. So that's awesome. One of my friends is super excited to be able to play those games, and especially like Majora's Mask, even Zelda Majora's Mask on Nintendo Switch Online. And also, honestly, that's kind of the main goal of my streams, is great games before your time, to showcase how many awesome great games came out before your time and to inspire people to play them. Well, Nintendo Switch Online is giving people the opportunity to do just that, play off some awesome N64 gems, even though they are definitely rough around the edges, those poor Nintendo 64 games. Even though Banjo-Kazooie is really kind of regarded as like Rareware's greatest N64 game, I actually like other games better. Toss up between probably Jet Force Gemini, which is really awesome, but Perfect Dark has kind of been resting as my top favorite N64 game forever. So those two are my two favorite Rareware games ever made. I briefly mentioned on some of the other Zelda games that I showcased, but most definitely didn't finish, is that they are very difficult. Zelda 1 and 2 for the Nintendo are very difficult games. There's no easy shortcuts. You just have to get good. That's the only way you can beat those games. And then similarly, even the Nintendo or Super Nintendo game, Link to the Past, is similarly a very difficult game. So here is kind of the first, even though it's like the fourth Zelda game, but here's kind of your fourth almost like console release, if you will, Zelda game. And it's definitely considerably easier. The guy that has been kind of the producer and director of these games, I'll recognize the name when I see it. Evidently, the story goes that he tried out Zelda for Nintendo, and like you reach that game over screen so quickly that it was more or less like, wow, he was never going to make a game that difficult. And so he didn't. I mean, all of these Zelda games that we've really had since are considerably easier games. No doubt about it, this is an excellent, amazing video game. It's likely on the top 10, or I shouldn't say 10. It's on the top best games lists of many people, as well it should be. Oddly enough, I always kind of preface that with the statement that I also feel that this game does get overly deified, and I guess I can kind of, since I'm going to stream it next, maybe explain what I mean by this as far as overly deified. Because yes, is it a great game, but is it perfect? No. If I were to talk about a few cool things, and I mean, this game was ahead of its time in a lot of respects. For example, it's one of the earliest games that had a day-night cycle based on like a real-time flowing clock, not like say Pokemon Silver or Gold, where it's like you had a specific time, and when it's nighttime in real life, it's nighttime, and vice versa. This game, I think it's like, was it 12, 18 minutes? But it doesn't even flow in towns and stuff, so only when you're outside or outside of dungeons, there are these day-night cycles, but not just getting day and getting dark. You can actually see it in the screen right now. There actually is a sun, there actually is a moon, and those like are rotating textures or backgrounds, if you will, and you do have dusks, sunrises, sunsets, dawns, dusks, days, nights. And honestly, that was really cool. It was so immersive at the time to kind of like step into a video game and actually have day-night cycles, among many other things that was unique and original to this game. Another thing that I appreciate that I don't think a lot of people really even elucidate when they're saying why this game is so awesome is I refer to it as like it's spatially correct, in the sense that the game is huge, but unlike all of your other previous games, you kind of, everything is connected, but if you were actually to try to build it in real life in 3D, or sometimes even in 2D, it wouldn't fit because you go take too many paths and things would actually overlap in real life. So this game kind of like doesn't do that, because obviously it's 3D, so it has to have some spatial correctness as it is. But I mean, when you're on the Hyrule Overfield, you can see Death Mountain. You can see its Ring of Fire. I mean, that's like really cool to be able to see something rendered so far away like that. Similarly, without spoiling anything, I'll point it out when I'm at the game. At one of the last areas of the game that would, sequentially I should say, allow you to go to the final dungeon of the game, you can like look out and see these like objects that really is your destination. And to me, for some reason, that really struck me as really amazing when I was playing this game in one of my first earliest playthroughs. Originally, I never realized that this was such a puzzle-heavy and puzzle-centric video game, and I got stuck a lot, and I probably should have just powered through it and kept playing it and figured things out by myself. But without really knowing what to do and constantly getting stuck every 2 seconds, even if I'm in the same dungeon even, it's like I remember always asking like, okay, well now what do I do? Now what do I do? What do I do next? What do I have to do? And I mean, I'm sure it probably got repetitive, but at the same time I was then able to play it because it is a fun game to play. It just is and was easy to get stuck in, because when you first transitioned into this game, things that you would never think would even be possible in a video game were in fact programmed in the game and also required in the puzzle, which I'll kind of showcase those as well throughout the playthrough. On that note though, there are definitely problems with the game because it's not perfect, and I think too many people always look at games through a like goggles of nostalgia. And so yeah, like whatever it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, when they played the game and it seemed so beautiful, so perfect. Remember, it's still an N64 game. The graphics are very rough around the edges. Will probably be in areas that definitely make our eyes bleed, or will make mine bleed. There are a lot of fixed image areas where they don't even have the 3D models finished. It's almost like they just had to finish by making a static image and then Link have like some weird wonky fixed camera running through there, which I definitely appreciate the 3DS remake of this, because pretty much everything, as far as I know, every single area of the game has been created and rendered in 3D with 3D buildings, models, and everything. And to just kind of show off what I mean, so I dug out, here is volume number 200 of Nintendo Power, because I'm pretty sure almost every single top 10 or top anything list produced by that magazine almost inevitably always put Zelda Ocarina of Time as number 1. So here it is, proof that in the 200th issue of Nintendo Power, the number 1 greatest game of all time was Zelda Ocarina of Time, which is interesting because let me check the date on this, February 2006. I would say there are many other games that I would put above Ocarina of Time, at least in my personal book, that was released prior to 2006. And even if I flip back to the previous page, check this out. So like number 2, Resident Evil 4, that's a classic. And Super Mario World, Super Mario 64. Of course, my favorite by then was Skies of Arcadia, which kind of pretty much still tends to be to this day. It makes me want to do a little miniature rant about Nintendo Power itself. Nintendo of America used to kind of like supervise and publish that, and in the last 5 years of its existence, they sold out to, I guess it was Future US, who then was the publisher of the Nintendo Power magazine. And it's kind of sad because you can definitely see the quality of the magazine plummet during that time. And then after 5 years, it was probably not considered profitable, so they ceased publication. The final, I believe, was December 2012, which is kind of sad. Obviously, we have the internet, and I mean, you can almost pretty much get every single news item instantaneously via the internet, no matter where it occurs in the world. So by the time 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, however long the publishing cycle is before you actually get the magazine, it's all old news. So I mean, like, even Future US tried to kind of deviate that by, instead of talking about like actual game guides, like, let's have and discuss game reviews. And they just kind of did so many, I swear it was like almost every year they did some sort of top list, whether it was like a top greatest games of all time, top musics of all time, top anything of all time, trying to do something different so that it wasn't, you know, obviously just old news by the time it actually hit the stands. But speaking of that, it's kind of funny, I believe it was around the time of Metroid Prime 3, so definitely we'll wait until I start streaming those GameCube gems. But it was actually, might have been close to the release of Metroid Prime 1 even, that a lot of people started, or whoever was working there, when it was time to make their top list of whatever, they started to overly deify the game Super Metroid. And honestly, that's a fun game too. I have not streamed it yet, but we'll definitely get to that later. And it was actually up there along with, surprise, surprise, Zelda Ocarina of Time.